The United States government has always sought to cover up its wrongdoing, from top-secret innovations to ultra-secret actions, and now we will tell you how they tried to erase this black history. The 1959 Arkansas Dormitory fire stands as a haunting and tragic chapter in American history, serving as a grim reminder of the racial injustices that marred the mid-20th century. On that fateful March 5th, a fire engulfed a dormitory housing 69 black teenagers in Arkansas, sealing the fate of 21 young lives who would not escape the flames. What makes this incident all the more heartbreaking is the revelation that they were locked inside the burning building, rendering them helpless and ultimately leading to their untimely deaths. Perhaps even more distressing than the fire itself is the extensive cover-up that shrouded this horrific event in secrecy for decades. The state of Arkansas, responsible for safeguarding its citizens, instead turned a blind eye to the truth and chose to conceal the atrocity. This calculated effort to bury the incident underscores the systemic racism and the stark disparities in treatment endured by African Americans during that era. The 1959 Arkansas dormitory fire is a stark testament to the resilience of historical amnesia and the urgent need for a more comprehensive understanding of the racial injustices that have plagued the nation's past. It serves as a poignant reminder that acknowledging such dark chapters is essential for healing, reconciliation, and ensuring that history is never allowed to repeat itself. In the 1950s, America's education system was marred by racial segregation. But what did separate but equal truly mean? Were boarding schools fostering unity or perpetuating division? How did the brutal disciplinary methods shape young minds? The history of segregation in the United States during the 1950s reflects a deeply troubling period in the nation's educational landscape. During this era, racial discrimination was institutionalized, most notably within the education system. The United States witnessed the prevalence of a racially segregated school system, where white and black students were separated by law, enforced through the infamous doctrine of separate but equal. Boarding schools played a pivotal role in maintaining this racial segregation. These institutions were designed to keep white and black students physically apart, reflecting the broader societal segregation. However, the concept of separate but equal was a grotesque misnomer, as these schools were far from equitable. White schools received disproportionately more resources, including funding, better facilities, advanced academic curricula, and access to extracurricular activities. In stark contrast, black schools were underfunded, dilapidated, and deprived of essential resources. Furthermore, the disciplinary methods employed in these segregated schools were harsh and punitive. Corporal punishment such as paddling, smacking, and humiliation tactics like the dunce cap were frequently used to control and discipline students. These methods perpetuated a climate of fear and inequality, leaving a lasting scar on the psyche of black students who were subjected to such treatment. The history of segregation in education during the 1950s serves as a stark reminder of the deeply rooted racial inequalities that plagued American society. It took monumental efforts and the bravery of individuals, like the Little Rock Nine, to challenge and eventually dismantle this unjust system, paving the way for greater educational equity and civil rights progress in the years to come. In the state of Arkansas, the grim reality of African American reform schools during the 1950s and beyond paints a distressing picture of systemic injustice and inhumanity. These juvenile correctional facilities, ostensibly designed for rehabilitation, became sites of profound suffering for young black boys. For these boys, life within these reform schools was characterized by a cycle of harshness and dehumanization. Forced labor was a daily, grueling reality, where they were subjected to arduous physical tasks without respite. These labor-intensive activities often served no rehabilitative purpose, but rather exploited their labor for the benefit of the institutions. Physical abuse was rampant within these reform schools. Staff members used leather straps and other instruments to inflict pain and maintain control. These brutal methods not only inflicted physical harm, but also left emotional scars that would persist long after their time in these institutions. Did this fire conceal a deeper injustice? Discover the harrowing living conditions of African American reform schools and the resilience of the Little Rock Nine in the fight for equality. Learn about Governor Orville Faubus's role during this turbulent era and the suspicions surrounding the dormitory fire. Let's explore the controversy surrounding the memorial dedicated to the 21 lost lives. Living conditions within these reform schools were abhorrent, reflecting the devaluation of the lives of these young boys. They were crowded into cramped spaces, lacked basic hygiene facilities, and endured severe deprivation. Inadequate clothing, food, and access to clean water compounded their suffering. The history of African American reform schools in Arkansas is a stark reminder of the deeply entrenched racism that permeated American society at the time. It underscores the urgent need for acknowledging and rectifying past injustices while emphasizing the importance of equitable and humane treatment for all, regardless of race or background. The era of desegregation in the United States, marked by the courageous actions of the Little Rock Nine in 1957, serves as a poignant chapter in the nation's civil rights struggle. During this tumultuous period, the South became a battleground for racial equality, with white authorities vehemently opposing integration and employing intimidation tactics against black families to maintain the status quo of segregation. The Little Rock Nine, a group of African American students, sought to enroll in Little Rock Central High School, a previously all-white institution. Their determination to access equal educational opportunities faced fierce resistance from white authorities and the broader community. Arkansas's Governor Orville Faubus infamously ordered the Arkansas National Guard to block the students' entry, a move emblematic of the resistance to integration. Intimidation tactics were a grim reality for black families during this era. Many were subjected to threats, harassment, and violence in an attempt to dissuade them from pursuing equal education for their children. This campaign of fear aimed to perpetuate racial segregation and deny African American students their rightful place in integrated schools. Despite these obstacles, the bravery of the Little Rock Nine and the support of civil rights activists eventually led to the desegregation of Little Rock Central High School. Their struggle became a symbol of the broader civil rights movement, highlighting the resilience and determination required to dismantle the deeply entrenched system of racial segregation in the United States. Governor Orville Faubus, a prominent figure during the civil rights era, is best remembered for his staunch opposition to the integration of Little Rock Central High School. While serving as Arkansas's governor, he made the controversial decision to deploy the Arkansas National Guard to prevent the enrollment of African American students, famously known as the Little Rock Nine, in the previously all-white school. His actions fueled a nationwide debate and ultimately led to federal intervention to protect the rights of these students to receive an equal education. It is notable that Faubus was in office during the tragic dormitory fire, raising questions about his leadership and the state's handling of racially charged incidents. During his tenure, the dormitory fire of 1959 stands as a harrowing tragedy in which 21 young lives were lost. What makes this event even more disturbing is the suspicion that it may have been intentional. The boys were locked inside the burning building, leaving them with no means of escape. Questions surrounding the fire's cause and accountability persist to this day, casting a shadow of doubt on the circumstances of this horrific incident. The possibility that it was an intentional act raises unsettling questions about those in authority during that time and the lengths to which some may have gone to suppress the African American community's aspirations for equality and integration. In 2019, a poignant memorial was finally dedicated to honor the memory of the 21 boys who tragically lost their lives in the 1959 dormitory fire. This long-awaited recognition aimed to provide closure for their families and shed light on a dark chapter of American history. However, this memorial has not been without its share of controversy. The controversy revolves around the handling of the boys' remains and the circumstances leading up to the fire. Some believe that the fire may have been deliberately set to discourage desegregation efforts in the wake of the civil rights movement. This suspicion adds a layer of complexity and mistrust to the official narrative surrounding the fire. Questions about the segregation of their remains, the lack of transparency in the process, and the alleged mishandling of their bodies have fueled ongoing debate and raised doubts about the commitment to justice and reconciliation in the aftermath of this tragic event. The memorial, while a step towards acknowledging this dark history, underscores the need for a thorough and impartial investigation into the circumstances surrounding the fire and the treatment of the victims' remains. Only through a comprehensive understanding of the past can we hope to address the enduring wounds inflicted by racial injustice and segregation in America. And that's all for this video. Subscribe if you want to watch more.